From WHYY, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from The Good Fight. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at John Stolnis. And coming up on this episode, we are going to talk about the news conference from Dave Dombrowski and manager Rob Thompson on Thursday morning. Some interesting things were said, not a lot of earth-shattering items, but it was a news conference that unsurprisingly made a lot of you mad. And I think it's because we wanted Dave Dombrowski to, I don't know, breathe fire and envelop the Phillies clubhouse in a storm of rageful inferno. And that didn't happen here on Thursday morning. So we'll talk about some of the things that Dave Dombrowski said. We got some tea leaves were offered in terms of what they might be looking to do this offseason. But we wanted to talk about this because this is going to be really the last time we hear from them until we get to the general manager meetings and the fall meetings coming up in the next few weeks. So joining me, we're doing an impromptu roundtable edition of the podcast here. Klugh and Liz Roscher hopping on. Liz Roscher, of course, is the editor of Sabres Baseball Research Journal. Follow her on X and Blue Sky at Liz Roscher. Liz, getting together on a Thursday night to talk about stuff Dave Dombrowski said. How fascinating. I'm sure you're strapped in for an hour of hilarity.
I mean, when am I not strapped in for an hour of hilarity? I'm always ready to go. Can I tell you that since the Phillies have ended their run in the postseason, I have planned and started way more craft projects than I really should.
That's wonderful.
Way more. This is what happens when, you're off your ADHD medication and you suddenly have like time on your hands in the evenings. What do? You look at lots of crafting patterns, crochet and the like, crochet and sewing, needlepoint.
You've got to find ways to stay productive in your day when you're not loaded down with stress about the Phillies and whether or not they can beat a team in the playoffs. So I get it. I think it's great that it's productive. Yeah, being funneled in this way. That's excellent, Liz. Yeah, way to go. Klugh from Baseball Prospectus also joining us here on the podcast. Follow him on Blue Sky at Klugh. Justin, how you feeling, pal?
Well, these press conferences exist for the purpose of saying the same couple of sound bites, the same kind of cliches, same kind of answers. Nobody ever really gets to hear what they want to hear, which is that Dave Dombrowski would come out and like pull a cord and a bunch of confetti and balloons would fall and be like, they'd be like, surprise, we're actually still in the playoffs and the game is tomorrow. Hooray. But you tune in because you want to see if somebody says anything crazy or how much they say that's like off the normal script of like, we thought we had a good team this year, ran into a buzzsaw, blah, blah, blah. These, this is what we're thinking on these fronts. You tune in because you want to hear them say like, okay, what's he going to say that's different from that? What's he going to say that's going to be crazy? And Dombrowski did say some stuff that wasn't necessarily what I expected in some areas, but I don't think I'm blowing people's minds here when I say that these types of things are never going to offer you the satisfaction that I think gets built up in people's heads, including mine some years. And this year, you just kind of go into it knowing like, yeah, he's not going to save the season with this press conference. He's just going to, give you what little information he's willing to say publicly. And that's essentially what happened.
Yeah, it's essentially we're saying like there's no way I don't think for us to be satisfied because we want them to be as angry as we are, and that's just now. If John Middleton was a part of this press conference, which by the way, really surprised John Middleton was not a part of this press conference here. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. I don't think he was there last year. I don't remember 100%, but I wonder if Mr. Middleton was just a little bit too, I don't know, like us, to take part in that news conference here on Thursday, and maybe the better part of valor to let Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson handle things. But it does, you don't get enough answers. Yeah, right, exactly. But you don't. Dombrowski's never going to say enough to make you feel good about this. You're never going to get enough answers. You're never going to be satisfied. At least I don't think I'm ever going to be satisfied. And I know reading the social media commentary, for the most part, I think 80% of the people I've seen were generally displeased by the tone and some of the things that were said during the news conference here by Dave Dombrowski on Thursday. So we're going to go through all of it here in the next few minutes. And let's start off talking about, before we get into specifics on players and things he said about Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos, which were eye-opening for sure. I do want to think it's interesting how Dave kind of framed the this year's playoff run. Seemed to me last year when they lost to the Mets, the Phillies really felt like we lost to a worse team. We underperformed. We beat ourselves. We got to fix this. This was awful. This was no way to go about things. We didn't play well from the second half on. That was not the vibe from Dave Dombrowski here, even though this was a third straight season in which the offense fell short, in which they didn't do enough to win a series, to beat a Dodgers team, where a series that was pretty much nip and tuck the entire time. I'm going to play a soundbite here from the news conference. When asked about their failures against the Dodgers, here's what Dombrowski had to say about that.
Similar to last year, when you go into this offseason, do you think there needs to be more change?
Well, need to be more change. We won 96 games. And again, you're always looking to get better. So we will be open-minded to that. I think it's a little bit different in that there's some built-in situations for us that are...
All right, I'm going to stop it there because a little bit later on he went on to say...
Because I'm already mad.
Yeah, already mad.
I'm already upset.
A little bit later on, he went on to say over a couple of different times, hey, listen, we faced the wrong club. Talking about the Dodgers, we faced the wrong club. We ran into the Dodgers. They were the wrong club to play. They're the defending world champions. And I think Dombrowski seemed to be saying like there was nothing we could have done. I think that's the vibe a lot of fans are getting here. It's like, well, hey, what are you going to do? And listen, the Dodgers are up 3-0 on the Brewers in the NLCS. They have given up 1 run in each game. Now, the Brewers are making some progress here. Okay, they had 2 hits in game 1, 3 hits in game 2, and 4 hits in game 3. So let's give the Brewers their due here. They are making progress. By the year 2035, they may actually get to the point where they score more than 1 run against the Dodgers in a playoff series. And so, I mean, I get what Dave Dombrowski is saying here. The Dodgers appear to be on some kind of ridiculous heater at the moment with their pitching staff. An offense in the Brewers that was, by all the numbers, better than the Phillies this year. And everybody was talking about, the Brewers offense destroyed Cubs pitching in the NLDS. They were red hot coming into this series against the Dodgers. You couldn't have asked for a hotter offense, nor a more different style of offense than what the Phillies had at their disposal against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are just rolling through them. So I think that's the lens, Justin, that Dave Dombrowski is looking at this through and saying, hey, it's a close series either way, and that's why they're kind of, I think, approaching this offseason, bringing back all the coaches, bringing back the manager, and just kind of making some smaller changes along the edges here, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I understand that. And that makes a lot of sense, honestly. I mean, and to the point of like, well, we won 96 games. I mean, Dombrowski's right. They won 96 games. They finished the year 30 games over 500. That's better. They keep getting better win-wise. Offensively, which was like the coming out of last year's postseason, the main thing people wanted to talk about all through the regular season this year. Well, not all through, but by the end of the regular season this year, the Phillies are a top offensive team. They are like that right there with the Dodgers, in a lot of cases behind only the Dodgers, in some cases ahead of the Dodgers in major offensive statistics. So like, he's right. I mean, that's a great team, and we all know how good the starting pitching staff was, and we all know that they added the best closer in baseball at the trade deadline. Doesn't fix a whole bullpen, but it does, give you a huge boost. So I think it's okay to sit there and say, like, look, everybody's upset because of how we lost in the playoffs, again. However, all you're ever really doing, I guess this isn't what he said, but like all you're ever really doing is trying to give yourself the best chance to win in the postseason because of the kind of things that happened in this postseason series, which were that the Phillies, out hit the Dodgers in a lot of categories and still walked away the losers. And we've kind of like generated reasons why that this Dodgers team was finally at full strength after really not being the case for most of the season. Then you're meeting them in the playoffs, and Blake Snell's a fresh arm. Roki Sasaki's a fresh arm. I mean, what he's saying makes sense. It's just, it's the kind of thing that's frustrating to hear, But he's right. And when you say things like we faced the wrong club, that's when you start feeling like, as fans, you're sitting there listening to that. That's what you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear
it
that.
It sounds like excuse making at that point,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like we were a good team, and then all it came down to was like we happened to face the one club that was capable of beating us despite how good we were. And it's just like, well, yeah, man, it's the playoffs. You're gonna run into that team. Like that's who's in the mix now. All the teams that are as good or better than you, or at least maybe not as bad, except that again 83 win Diamondbacks team that just really had the Phillies number a couple years ago. But the point is, he's sitting there saying things that are true, but nothing that you really want to hear in most cases, and that's really the frustrating part. Because like you said. You hear excuses like that, and, again, what's he going to say? What's he going to come out and say? Like, we were better than them. They just got the win. Like, I don't know. It's not his job to go out there and be a cheerleader. But then, we also talked ourselves into a tizzy about how many changes they're going to make. And then they come out and say, well, Rob Thompson's coming back. And then they come out and say, well, the whole coaching staff's coming back. So I think people were already... had a head full of bugs and bees by the time this press conference was starting, because no changes had been made, and we were 3 or 4 days into the offseason already. So, like, when are those changes going to come? And then it sounds like, there are some changes that are coming, but I think once again you'll be looking at an offseason where not enough change occurs for those who are looking to see it for the Phillies. So...
yeah,
just a generally, kind of normal press conference with reflecting the frustrating nature of the end of the Phillies season.
Yeah, Liz, I want to get your thoughts on it too, because what it sounds like Dave Dombrowski is saying is we have a great team. We have a really great team. We actually played really well in the playoffs this year, unlike in previous seasons, and we just ran into a better team. So we don't really feel the need to do a whole lot, to do a total facelift and makeover. Not like Justin said, there's going to be changes. I'm going to talk about some of those that are, that he intimated are coming here this offseason. But is that how you read it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the previous episode. Like, you look at the Phillies, and once you set aside the guys that are already signed for at least the next year or two, and you look at who else is available to, get rid of or upgrade or whatever you want to call it. Like, there's not a lot of major guys. Like, the major changes that people wanted, I wanted to know where they thought they were going to come from. And it turns out there aren't going to be any, like, major changes. Because what are you going to do? Like, you changing the managers, one of the biggest changes you can make. Changing the coaches is like the second biggest change you can make. They're all coming back. So, like, I don't hold it against them. I think, I don't think there is a lot they could do to sort of upgrade. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating to hear the same old thing, but it's less frustrating if that's what you're expecting. It was less frustrating to listen to if that's what you're expecting, and that's what I was expecting. Like, that's why I didn't listen to it. That's why I read it after the fact.
I'm just not buying the idea this time around that, like, the Phillies are handcuffed, or that there's just, like, nothing to be done, or no better players. I mean, like, there are always ways to tinker and change, and I know that, like, Nick Castellanos is going to be a big center point of, like, roster change, because he's part of this press conference was kind of guaranteeing that, like, he's just not going to be around. Learned a little bit more about that situation, which is a little alarming, but also all anyone has been able to say, because this is all you can say for big deals like Kyle Schwarber or JT Realmuto, is that, like, oh yeah, we want him, we want to go back, like, we want to bring him back, like, it's our intent to bring him back, blah blah blah. But they may not. And, like, then there's a big roster change in one or both of those cases if that doesn't happen. If the right, deal finds its way to Dave Dombrowski's desk, and, that deal involves Alec Bohm, I mean, that's also something that that can change. Mm-hmm. That's an area where you could theoretically improve, even if it's just in, like, 2026 that you improve that. So I don't know. I'm tired of hearing that there's just not anything that they can do. I feel like there is, and, like, that's what Dave Dombrowski's job is to do, is to find those things.
Yeah, that's what the money's for, right? I mean, that's where you get, and I think I read some things into what he was saying, indicating that kind of where I think where his mind is right now. And we'll jump into that stuff in just a second. I did want to talk about the next item that was of particular note, and that was the coaching staff. We talked about the fact, we knew that the manager was going to be coming back. I am surprised that the entire coaching staff is back. I am surprised kind of that Kevin Long is coming back. And again, we talked about whether or not that has anything to do with trying to make sure you get Kyle Schwarber back and you want to maintain that relationship. But I know that they look at the improvements that Bryson Stott made in the middle of the season. There was that JT Realmuto improvement in the middle of the season as well. And I know JT had been reluctant to mess with his leg kick at all, and he finally did. And, we saw some improvement there for a good long while. I think that it's they are making one change, and that is that they're creating a new position, which is called the field coordinator. Bench coach Mike Calitri will transition over, and whose name I just learned earlier this week with Justin, that we had a bench coach named Mike Calitri. He will take over in this new role of field coordinator. What is a field coordinator, you might ask? Glad you asked. I looked it up. A field coordinator acts as a liaison between the major and minor league coaching staffs, ensuring the consistent implementation of a team's playing philosophy and development strategies throughout the organization. They oversee and teach the manager's systems to minor league coaches, coordinate minor league spring training, and evaluate staff and player performance. So Mike Calitri is going to be doing that to try and get, which is, I'm amazed that maybe they were doing this, but doing it in a different way. I don't know. But if this is going to streamline that process, aces sounds like something every team should do. And now they're going to need a new bench coach. And Liz, they've said, Dave Dombrowski said during the news conference that they're going to be looking outside the organization for a bench coach, and that it will likely be a former major league manager, somebody who has experience, to hopefully tell Rob Thompson, hey, let's not bring Dave Robertson out for a wraparound inning in the 7th inning of the postseason when he hadn't done that in the entire 2 months you had him on the team. It's actually something Rob Thompson says he regretted at the news.
Oh, really? He regretted that, did he?
Yeah, he regretted that a little bit. And he also regretted not asking Matt Strahm to come in much this offseason in a sticky situation with runners on base like he asked him to do in the playoffs. Hey, let's try this for the first time in Game 1 of the NLDS. Maybe the bench coach can help with that moving forward.
He turns into a completely different player. A completely different manager. Like a completely different dude. Like he just, like the guy that he is in the regular season evaporates and is this totally different guy. I don't understand it. What was the question? Was that the question?
I'm not sure we had one.
I'm not sure we had a question out of that. But they did say that Rob.
Sorry.
I mean, I think the bench coach is going to be hopefully, somebody
Bruce
with
Bochy.
experience. Yeah, I mean, there's some names floating around out there.
Brian
Basically,
Snitker.
Brian Snitker. No,
Stop it! Oh, don't you dare!
The name I did
Well,
hear.
like the bench coach is sort of like the right hand guy.
Yeah, right hand guy
of the manager. So I like that they're like, we're bringing in someone with more experience now that Rob Thompson has been here for so many years.
And I will remind you that when the 2008 Phillies won the World Series, the first person Charlie Manuel turned to shake the hand of was Jimmy Williams, who was basically this person, his right-hand man, referred to openly at times as co-manager of the team, who handled all of the pitching stuff because Charlie Manuel was like, "Look, I'm a hitting guy.
I'm bats.
Like,
I'm hitting
you
season
wanna,
guy. Yeah.
Somebody else can handle all the pitching stuff, and like it can be a what's it called, a puppet regime, and that's fine. I'm gonna do the hitting stuff, and worked out great there. So that kind of influence can be very invaluable.
It's fascinating to me that the pitching coach doesn't have more say on this. And maybe it's different in different organizations, but it's interesting to me that Caleb Cottom wouldn't say, we haven't asked David Robertson to do this yet. Perhaps we bring in Ranger Suarez here seeing as how he's available for game one. You see how the Dodgers are using Tyler Glass now in just that way? Instead of asking David Robertson, who got out of a sticky situation the inning before, to come back out, and maybe we try that. I'm surprised that, that doesn't fall to the pitching coach to say something, or maybe it does in some dugouts. I don't know, but
don't you kind of get the impression though that with Caleb Cotham, who is obviously a master at what he does, I feel like his focus is more on pitcher's ability and execution rather than like strategy and usage.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure he is weighing in too much on that.
Probably not. Well, obviously. Yeah. I think that's obvious. And so I'm more saying, like, I'm amazed. I'm curious and amazed that it's not that way, but you're right. I think he works on their stuff and keeping an eye on what their stuff looks like, and, trying to keep track of, when it may be deteriorating, and working with JT in between innings, to formulate what they're going to do with the next three hitters in the lineup or whatever. So I get that. You're right. That's probably more what happens. And that's why you need a bench coach. David Ross is a name that's been floated around right now.
Really? That's interesting. I had not heard that. And that was a name I threw out there when we were talking about who would have replaced Rob Thompson over on Absolutely Hammered in our postseason wrap-up. And that's really interesting.
Just a speculation.
It's pure speculation, but for a guy in that role, he kind of has that same sort of like players guy mentality as Rob Thompson, but also just like another, that'd be interesting. I would like to see that. He would be a good guy to have around.
As would I. And it looks as though Dave Dombrowski said, and this will happen obviously, that Rob Thompson will get a 1-year extension so that he doesn't enter 26 as a lame duck. I know everybody's going to be up in arms about that, but that's just standard operating procedure, so that
you can still fire him. So
yes,
it's okay, folks. If you're mad about it, they can still fire him anytime.
It doesn't make his job any more or less tenuous. It is a message to the clubhouse, essentially, that he's our guy. Don't think that he isn't. All right, let's talk about the Bryce Harper comments. I thought this was the single most newsworthy and noteworthy part of the news conference. I thought what he said was kind of shocking. I'm gonna not shocking in that it was wrong necessarily, but I'm gonna play the comments here for you, and then we'll react.
Why do you believe maybe that it was just a down season for him and not the start of maybe a downward trend?
Well, I don't think. I mean, in Bryce's case, of course, he's still a quality player. He's still an all-star caliber player. He didn't have an elite season like he has had in the past. And I guess we only find out if he becomes elite or he continues to be good. I mean, it's not like it's like if you say to me, I look around the league, he's a really good player, right? He still is a good player. Is he elite like he was before? Probably not to the same extent, and so that's nothing negative. He's a tremendous player, and that's, to me, is Bryce. Can he rise to the next level again? I don't really know that answer. I mean, and really, he's the one that will dictate that more than anything else, is what it comes down to. So I don't think he's content with the year that he had. And again, it wasn't a bad year. But when I think of Bryce Harper, you think an elite, right? You think of one of the top 10 players in baseball, and I don't think it fit into that category. But again, very good player. I have no idea when you see somebody. I've seen guys at his age, he's not old, that level off. Or I've seen guys rise again. We'll see what happens.
So
He couldn't stop talking at the end there. He just kept digging.
He kept going.
He kept digging and digging.
Now,
looking for gold, and he just never found it.
I'll say this, and I think anybody who watched Bryce, I wrote about this. We've talked about this on the podcast. I wrote about it for The Good Fight. Bryce Harper was in the background for most of this season. He had a few games where he popped and was the star, but for the most part, it was Kyle Schwarber's team. It was the pitching staff's team, and then you had a bunch of other guys step up. Bryce Harper did not have an impactful season. He finished 11th in the National League in OPS. That's fine. It's a good season. Like Dave Dombrowski said, it's a good season, a really good season, but it was his lowest mark in 9 seasons. He missed 30, I think it was 30 games exactly with a wrist injury. The Phillies say that he was healthy at the end of the season, that the wrist was not an issue at all. So doesn't sound like we're going to be hearing about a Bryce Harper wrist surgery or cleanup or anything like that. And I think Dave Dombrowski was honest about his assessment and correct in his assessment of Bryce Harper's season. Like if you watched Bryce Harper this year and you didn't see something different than what we have seen in previous years, I don't know what you were watching. I mean, that's why the moment, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to let you guys talk too, but I just want to say, like, if you saw that game against the Dodgers at the end of the season, and in the game where they clinched the National League East, he hits the big home run in the 8th inning to put them ahead, and he's fires his wrist coming around first base. How many times this year did you see him show emotion on the field? Like, how many times this year did you see him fired up after a hit or after a home run? I mean, I know the Phillies were, like we said, trying to go about this in a more business-like way, but man, there wasn't a smile cracked this season on the field for Bryce. And I don't really care if players smile or they grimace or they frown or whatever. But things were different this year with Bryce Harper. And Dave Dombrowski, I think this is more than just what the numbers on the back of the baseball card said. I don't know what was going on. But Liz, I don't think this was a shot across the bow. I don't think Bryce Harper's going anywhere. I think they still love Bryce, and I think they still want him. But there was dissatisfaction in his performance this year. He said it as kindly as you could, and he was very truthful here. It was not an elite season from Bryce Harper, and he's wondering, like the rest of us are, is that guy ever coming back?
I think Bryce would agree that it wasn't an elite season. That it wasn't his top-notch work. I think he would agree with that. But to hear Dombrowski say it so clear was really, I was not expecting to hear him say that about Bryce Harper. And whether or not he means to, Bryce Harper loves to use things as bulletin board material. So maybe this will become that. I would like that. Like, not publicly, though honestly, I kind of would love that. Bryce Harper at war with his own president of baseball operations. I'd love that.
So he's not hurt. Like I kept saying, I bet we're going to hear that he was hurt. So he's not hurt. So who, and I'm not even really asking this facetiously, but who can explain to me Bryce Harper's approach at the plate in the postseason, assuming he is not like hurt and just up there swinging and thinking, well, if I swing hard, I might run into something and then that'll be something, or I can put the ball in play. Because he was up there hacking like he was like in a hurry to get back to the dugout.
But that was all season, Justin. It was all season he was doing that.
When he was on the field, yeah. So just can we what is the reason for that then? Like, okay, so he's healthy. And all right, we're going to say he's just not the player he used to be, but given that he was an elite player, that means he's still capable of being an all-star. Okay, well, not doing what he was doing out there this year, is he capable of being an all-star? So, yeah, I mean, something's going on. Something's going on in his head, which is what it has to be if we're saying, no, he's been healthy and everything's fine on the physical front, so something changed. Is it just deterioration, natural deterioration that we're saying, that he's just, not up there anymore? He's down here because that's just how the human body works, and especially in professional athletes? Or are we saying, there was something, his head wasn't right and his approach was just all wrong and totally unhelpful and not really that productive? Certainly not as much as it's been in past years. This team, doesn't need another 260 hitter. This team needs a guy that's, going to get hot a couple times a year and really take it to the next level. So I don't know. I mean, something is, I guess at the very best, something is different, and at the very worst, something is wrong, and it's not physical. So that's that. You want to talk about how this roster can change? I'm not saying they're moving on from Bryce. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but they got to adjust to this. Because this is a team that's kind of built around Bryce Harper, that kind of started with Bryce Harper, that is supposed to be, we have this superstar, and here's these other guys, and they have their jobs, but he's the central figure. And hey, if that's not the case anymore, he can still certainly have a role to play, but this is a different team. So you can't, I think, say that like, yeah, we don't know what Bryce Harper is anymore. But anyway, we're just going to run it back. I don't think so, man. You're not going to get the results you want if that's the case.
Yeah, and for the folks who, I mean, for the folks who want to move on from Bryce Harper, he's got a full no trade clause. Obviously, he's not going anywhere unless he wants to go somewhere. Now, could
I'm sorry. How big is the let's move on from Bryce Harper movement?
It's not big. It's
okay.
not big.
Can't be.
But I think there are enough people out there, and I've seen enough people out there. I'd say it's maybe 10% of the fan base, 15% that's really just unhappy with how he's performed the last year, I guess it was, because he was pretty good last year in the playoffs. He was one of the few guys who showed up. But I think that I think it's a very small group, and maybe that's just 5% of the group. But I mean, for people who want change, you want to get rid of one of these big contracts or whatever it is. I mean, most people want to see Trey go if they're going to trade somebody or whatever it happens. It's not going to be Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is in control of his own destiny. Unless he decides he wants to go somewhere else, he's not going anywhere else. And so, I think it's good for, the Phillies front office. They don't criticize their players very often. There were a couple of instances in this news conference, we're going to get to the other two, where Dave Dombrowski was kind of openly critical of some of the players. And I think that's good. There needs to be a little bit of public accountability. He didn't shame Bryce Harper, and he was, largely complimentary. He said he had a very good season, but that they signed him to expect more. They needed more from him, especially in October. They're lucky Kyle Schwarber had a 56 homer season. Like, if Schwarber doesn't have that season, I don't know how many games they win this year, because Harper really just wasn't in the forefront for most of the year. So if he doesn't return to Bryce Harper levels, I don't know how this team functions as an offense next year unless they go out and they get another really great bat, in addition to re-signing Schwarber and Real Muto. And I don't know that they have the money to spend and do that, and that they have the wherewithal to do that.
I wonder if Bryce thinks he's declining.
I don't know.
I guess that's not really a helpful question. I guess now I'm more just like, I heard this. So it was Devin Caney on WIP mentioned moving on from Bryce Harper. And I guess I wasn't as aware of how often that conversation is happening because, I don't have a Twitter account anymore. But at the same time, it just doesn't feel realistic. But I don't know. I don't want to be the naive one in this situation. I mean, the guy's signed to a 13-year deal that he's more than halfway through. Are we saying the first, like, we all knew decline was going to be a part of this. Right. Are we saying the first year that he shows a sign of that might be, but isn't guaranteed to be decline, it's time to cut bait? And do you really think you're going to, I mean, you would be able to find somebody to take that contract on, I guess, at this point. Do you really think you're going to be able to find somebody to take on Turner's, if that's the one you want to move on from? I mean, he's got way more time on his deal left. So I don't know. I guess I'm just wondering about the realistic aspect of moving on from either of these guys.
So I saw the and Devin's response on WIP went viral, obviously, but she was responding to something that Ruben Amaro said on the radio. Ruben Amaro Jr. said, because he's basically saying nothing's off the table, and he said, I think one of the big contracts maybe get moved. And he didn't specify. He would not specify any further than that. They've got a lot of big contracts on that team, and so they were just kind of running through all the people, like, would it be Trey? What about Bryce? And that was kind of like a what about kind of comment. What about Bryce? He had a down year. He's got this much money on his contract. He didn't look right at the plate all year. He's got injuries. He's had an injury issue. So it was kind of along those lines. In other words, just trying to say, like, there are no sacred cows on the Phillies at this point. Like, if Dave Dombrowski, if there's a way for him to make the team better by moving on, by trading away a Turner or a Harper or whoever, he should do it, and he should consider it and possibly do it. But Liz, like, I don't think that's out there, right? I don't think you make yourself better by trading Bryce Harper right now.
No, I don't think you do. How do you make yourself better? I mean, I don't see how that's possible to, like, you're right. Like, no one's going to take that contract. It's silly to think about, even. Like, I'm trying to concoct, like, a narrative around it, and I'm having a tough time.
Didn't Turner just have his best full year with the Phillies?
Yeah.
He looked way better on defense than anybody thought he was going to be. Yeah. So, like...
He had his best season since 2021. He had, like, the second most WAR of his career this season.
Let's sell low, everyone.
Yeah. Well, Turner wouldn't be selling low, but I mean...
Well, no, but, like, but you don't get rid of the guys that are actually doing well if you're a team that wants to win games.
Right.
You get rid of good guys if you're a team that wants to lose games.
And that's the conundrum facing the Phillies right now and Dave Dombrowski. There's two competing thoughts here. There are two competing thoughts on how you fix this roster for 2026. And I use the word fix in quotations because how much fixing does a 96-win team need? That seems to be the question that Dave Dombrowski and the rest of the front office are trying to answer right now. They obviously know they can't, quote unquote, run it back. And everybody's definition of that, I think, is a little bit different. What exactly does running it back mean? Does it mean returning all of the coaching staff and only making a few changes along the margins? Did running it back or not running it back mean firing everybody on the coaching staff and jettisoning Trey Turner or letting Schwarber go and doing all of this? Like, everybody's definition of what running it back means is a little bit different here. And so you have these competing interests. Sure, you want to make changes. There needs to be a different mix, right? Something does need to change here. And I think there should be significant change. But how much worse do you make the team for the sake of making change? And I think that's where the reality doesn't match the dream state. Because if you do want to swap out some of the players, the main players that have gotten you where you've been the last 4 years, it's going to be very difficult to match what their production was from anybody else to bring in, unless you do what the Dodgers did and you just spend money and get everyone in here that possibly wants to come here. And that's not what the Phillies are going to do. So I think that's where a lot of this disconnect is for me. And I don't want them to run it back either. I want to see significant changes too. But you're talking about we're probably going to see, and you probably want to see Turner and Harper and Schwarber and Real Muto and Stott. Nobody wants to trade Stott. Some people want to trade Marsh, but Marsh seems like he's probably not going anywhere. It's like, that's 6 guys. That's 6 out of your 9. So and you've had the whole coaching staff come back. It really does look like you're running it back.
Exactly.
You don't really want to, because if you do, you'll make yourself worse.
So let's say you trade Trey Turner. Like, to your point, John, about like what do you get back from that doesn't make it just change for change's sake? So what's a constructive Trey Turner trade? Is it like you trade him and then you get back 2 really good bullpen arms, a platoon partner for Brandon Marsh, some kind of minor league filler as well? Like, after that, I mean, that's helpful. Who's playing shortstop? Are you just going to go like, okay, well, Aiden Miller's the shortstop now? Switching out Trey Turner for Aiden Miller is a huge change in statistical production, I would say. That's
philosophy.
That's different. Are you getting that from these other pieces that you have now brought in? And yeah, to your point then, John, like a team that finished with 96 wins, trading the guy that just won the National League batting title to address their other issues, but then leaving themselves with a hole where that guy used to play at shortstop, the most important defensive position other than catcher. I mean, I don't know. It's just not tracking yet, I guess. I like, honestly, the idea of being like, well, nothing is sacred and no one is sacred and anything can happen. But that's what you say before you make like a butt for a team that is about to make a bunch of changes, which we were kind of like, I guess, assuming was going to happen. But you're right. I mean, kind of sounds like significant change would be maybe 1 or 2 guys in the starting lineup. And we know Castellanos is pretty much out the door. So
yeah. Well,
I don't know. This is throwing me a little bit because on the one hand, yeah, Harper had a bummer of a season, and that's obviously one of the big contracts. But like, I don't know. This seems strange that we're talking about this because he's like the franchise player. I don't know. You're watching me work this out in real time.
And I mean, here's the thing. I don't think Harper's not going anywhere, guys.
Yeah, I'd be
not
very
going
surprised if he
And
did.
I think this was a challenge from Dave Dombrowski to Bryce Harper to figure out whatever was going on with him this year, because they need him to be at an elite level, at least for next year. Like 33 years old, you're still a young player. I mean, you're still a young guy. You're not a young player anymore, but you're still a young guy. 33 years old, you should still be able to play at an elite level when you're Bryce Harper. So that's what I think this was. I think it was a challenge to Bryce Harper because I think there was, I don't know what it was, but he was not in the right place this year. And it just, I don't know. Liz, do you disagree?
No, I think it was also a message because I know he and Scott Boras had been sniffing around like a renegotiation or like an extension onto the end of his 13-year contract. As recently as last year, there was nothing about that this year. But
Yeah.
I know as recently as last year, there was noise about it and Boras was talking about it to the media.
Yeah.
And so that might have been a message like, do not come knocking at my door this year, because the answer will absolutely be no.
Yeah.
If you want it, you either bring your cost way down or you got to show me something.
But you're right, John, that like the statement of, yeah, I mean, he had like a not great year this year, and the only thing that's going to prove that this wasn't the beginning of a decline is what he does next year, and he's kind of in charge of that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that is the answer. That is the only answer. And
it's not like Dombrowski didn't even say he didn't have a good year. He said he had a very good year, but it just wasn't an elite type year like they were hoping and expecting from him. So, interesting stuff. And I'll be very interested to see if Bryce is asked about it at any point this offseason, see what he has to say. I do think, we're talking about changes, and I do think one area we're going to see changes in the outfield. And that seemed clear from what Dave Dombrowski had to say. Specifically, Nick Castellanos is gone. That's everything. Matt Gelb reported in The Athletic that Nick Castellanos, the Phillies are expected to either trade or release Castellanos. That's according to club sources. Dave Dombrowski was asked about Castellanos, whether he can continue on as a Philly in 2026, despite all the different things that went on with Rob Thompson. I'm going to play that soundbite here for you as well.
Dave, there were a few moments this season where Nick seemed upset with his role and maybe with Rob to a degree. I know he's under contract, but can that relationship continue for another season?
Well, we'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get into specific players that are on the roster under contract, but the things that you talked about are accurate, but we'll see what happens.
Dave,
we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Nick Castellanos is going away. There's no doubt about it. The only thing that's going to matter is there a team that'll be willing to trade for him? I don't think there will be, because the Phillies are going to release him if they can't find a trade partner, and they're going to have to eat a lot of the money, if not all the money. And so they're not going to get a whole lot of salary relief. The only thing they're going to get is roster relief. They're going to open up a spot in right field. And so Dave Dombrowski also talked about, Justin Crawford. Looks like he is absolutely going to play a role. They absolutely want him to win a starting job in the outfield out of spring training. And so you're going to have question marks in left field, center field, right field. Before we get into the whole outfield picture, Justin, what were your thoughts about what Dombrowski had to say about Castellanos?
Nick Castellanos hit 209 in the second half of the season. He hit 5 home runs from July to the end of the regular season.
Woof.
Yeah. He did that thing he is good at doing, which is, kind of no-shows for a while in the regular season, then comes up with these like big clutch moments in the postseason. And that is, a really interesting part of his game. But ultimately, if he's going to complain about not having a starting job while putting up those numbers, have fun starting for the White Sox or something, man. Because those are the teams that start guys with numbers like that. And you're this logical guy who's always, pointing out the holes in people's questions and everything. And there just seems to be a giant disconnect in your own logic at the moment that your output does not match that of a starting player.
Boss. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know what to tell you at this point. Yeah, he can't come back like that. That's kind of it. Like maybe if you could frame something around like, oh yeah, he's still a member of this team and the guys love him and bounce back candidate. I'm not saying I would be down with that. I would actually not be down with that. But that would be like the kind of framing that would at least be maybe a little more appeasing. Throw in all this stuff with the disagreements and the complaining and the having a therapy session in the post game interview that one night, and you're just like. You don't need this stuff. You don't need this stuff on top of the other stuff, and this is unfortunately how Castellanos has kind of left a lot of his relationships with teams every time he's moved on from another one. And there's always a little bit of cantankerousness, that comes through, and he's got this kind of Jimmy Butler quality to him where he shows up and you're like, why does everyone complain about this guy? He's our guy now, and we love his attitude. And then slowly it deteriorates over time until suddenly you're like, that's kind of enough, man. This really just can't continue. It's kind of a bummer. Ultimately, this is going to be, assuming he's as gone as we think he is, this will wind up being a pretty disappointing deal. I don't regret that the Phillies did it and made it. It was very exciting when they did because of the what it felt like the potential this could be and the kind of guy Nick Castellanos was. But ultimately, I think people, including us, may have just had the wrong idea about him coming in, and we certainly didn't get what we wanted from him, and I would say that I'm sure he is disappointed as well, but I don't know. He seems to think he still deserves his job, so I disagree with him on that front. So, yeah, this is it's ultimately, I don't think we ever got the player we wanted Nick Castellanos to be, despite, having that, I'll say, all-star season. It's more like a season in which he was an all-star, but he was not an all-star even throughout that entire season. So, yeah, I wanted a guy who could come in and, be a power threat somewhere, like a little lower in the lineup, who's going to stomp on home plate and maybe start a brawl or two over the years that he's in Philadelphia. And you're like, yeah, this is like our troublemaking slugger guy. This is cool. Never really saw that guy too much. So ultimately a disappointing deal, and really didn't care for the kicking of the hornet's nest and everything right before the playoffs started.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be missed by anybody. Like my favorite part of Dombrowski's statement was that he said, we're not going to comment on, players under contract right now, and then proceeded to spend the rest of the entire news conference talking about players under contract and not under contract. Like, he not only kicked the hornet's nest, he was the guy that told the media about the Bryce Harper confronting Rob Manfred thing. Like, he's got to be, he can't be well liked in the clubhouse at all right now.
It does kind of make you wonder why he did that.
Yeah, I've been wondering the whole time. I mean, that's when I thought he's definitely not coming back. Like, he would have to hit 500 for the rest of the season, and he proceeded to just continue to stink up the joint. So he didn't even earn his keep back from that.
Yeah, I mean, he was never the player that they signed him to be. He was going to be that right-handed power bat, behind Schwarber and Harper. I mean, imagine if he'd been that guy, what this offense might have looked like.
Oh, God, no.
They'd actually had a cleanup hitter in Nick Castellanos who did that job. And he was an anchor around them for most of the time. He had some stretches here and there, but for most of the time, he largely held them back. Some nice sliding catches in 22. Had some big home runs early in the 23 playoffs, and after that, and then a couple big moments in the playoffs in 24 and 25. Can't take that away from him. But yeah, just a bizarre player, and he will not be fondly remembered when all is said and done in Philadelphia. And I thought some of the other things that Dave Dombrowski said about the outfield were interesting. It sure sounds like they are going to be counting on some youth movement to come to the majors this year, which is what you need to have happen if you're going to keep a window of contention open. Justin Crawford has done everything he can do in AAA. Rob Thompson said that in the news conference today, too. There's nothing left for him to prove in AAA. So they are likely going to make their moves this offseason with the idea that Justin Crawford is going to be starting in left or center field. And I think that's the right approach. I think at some point, you need to trust these prospects that you have decided you are not going to trade, like you refuse to include them in trades over the last couple of seasons. You have done all of this work and spent all of this time developing them. And now they are old enough and developed enough to come to the majors. Justin Crawford probably being the most ready position player. He's got to have one of those spots. Now, here's the issue, as I see it. Justin Crawford, and Matt Gelb wrote about this in his Athletic article too, does not profile as an above-average defensive center fielder. He is most likely best suited to be a left fielder. We have another guy on this team who swings from the left side of the plate, who also does not profile as an above-average defensive center fielder and is best suited as a left fielder in Brandon Marsh. I think the reporting is Brandon Marsh is probably a slightly better defensive center fielder than Justin Crawford, which gives you some idea of Justin Crawford's defensive abilities in center. You have two left-handed hitters who with similar batting profiles that are likely only to play left field. So I don't really know how you keep them both for 2026. I'm trying to, because I think in right field, you want to get at least one everyday outfielder this offseason, right? I think that's the goal. Like, you want to have at least, whether it's in center or it's in right or it's in, like, you want to have one star player in the outfield if you can get one. They need to have something like that, because you can't have three platoons in left, center, and right. So I don't know how this is all going to break down. I mean, they could go out and they could re-sign Harrison Bader to play center field and just hope that this 2025 season is what you're going to get from him over the next couple of seasons. Or you go get like Trent Grisham, who had a low batting average, but hit over 30 home runs for the Yankees and had like 3.5 wins above replacement to play center field. Have Crawford in left. But then I don't know what you do with Brandon Marsh. Do you have Crawford in left and Marsh in right? That doesn't seem like enough offense in the outfield. So this is where the change is going to be with this roster. It's going to be in the outfield. But as I'm sitting here right now, if you want Justin Crawford to be a part of things, I don't really know what all the rest of the pieces look like at this point.
Yeah, Crawford, well, it's comical that they're like, well, he has nothing left to prove in the minor leagues, which, I don't want to dwell on this, but going back to, so what was he doing down there for as long as he was this year? But regardless, skipping over that, just look at his numbers. He hit 334 in the minor leagues this year. Like, you can go ahead and call him up when that's how you're hitting over 112 games. It's also very reflective of how he was hitting. They stuck him up at AA at the end of 2024 for 40 games, and he pretty much did the same thing. So, like, they're putting him at new levels, and I'm writing some player comments for the BP annual in 2026 right now, and you're always talking about how guys like this guy was he's really good, he adapted well, then he hit this level, AA, AAA, and he ran into a higher level competition and he needed time to adjust, and Crawford's not really doing that anymore. So that's
Aiden Miller, but not really Justin Crawford.
Yeah. But that's a sign, that's one of your signs that, like, okay, this guy's ready for a shot at the big club. But everything we've heard about Justin Crawford, the comp that I keep coming back to is Ben Revere, who is not a bad player, but not a natural fly ball tracker and a guy who covered gaps with his speed. Justin Crawford is very fast. We all know that he does hit a lot of ground balls, and that again, it doesn't necessarily impact his game because he's got the speed to still, like, get to second base on something that's staying on the ground. So that's a player who can definitely make an impact, and like you said, it gives you a sort of wave of youth that is going to be able to keep a window of contention open. That being said, if you feel like him, and I'm by you, I mean the Phillies at this point, Dave Dombrowski, if you feel like he profiles similarly to Brandon Marsh, and I do think, it'd be worth a shot to say, hey, maybe fewer loose parts with these platoons, maybe more established players who have everyday roles, let's give that a shot. Then maybe Marsh is a guy you can move. Maybe Marsh is a guy you can move because you're like, well, we like what we see from Crawford, and he kind of profiles the same way, and that's the guy we want to see in left field. Not a guy we have to think, all right, who's hitting because tonight, this guy, they're going with a lefty, and we don't want to have Brandon Marsh out there flailing at nothing. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that just kind of opens up that opportunity to revitalize the lineup in another area. Bring up the young guy from the minors and trade the guy who he makes more or less redundant. Because yeah, I think you're right. Having both those guys and then like Harrison Bader in the outfield, you're not generating enough offense. I like Bader as a center fielder. The Phillies have not had real center fielders for a long time. However, that offense is not going to be what it was for the most of this year for Harrison Bader. You already saw that tailing off by the end, even before he pulled his groin. So that's not something I think you can rely on as like the regular Harrison Bader output. So yeah, I think it almost feels like somebody's missing from that equation. You need somebody in there who is like the outfield captain, who is like running the show. It'd be great to just have like a center fielder who plays Gold Glove defense and hits the ball. Doesn't have to be an MVP candidate, but somebody who is like, up there in like all-star conversations. That would be a huge boon. And then surround him with like the guy you want to start acquiescing to the major leagues, and another guy who can hit both righties and lefties. That would be great. That would be a great way to improve.
I want to see Justin Crawford, and I would rather see them deal Brandon Marsh and see what Justin Crawford has, because I kind of know I know what we have in Brandon Marsh, and I'm interested to see a younger player who has some upside, some real potential.
If you're interested in change, this is the kind of deal you should be interested in. Honestly,
exactly right. Free agents, Phillies. It sounds like the Phillies are definitely interested in bringing Kyle Schwarber back. There is reporting by, again, Matt Gelb. They're quite interested in re-signing Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto. He did say, Dave Dombrowski did, that it's impractical that they would be able to bring their top 4 free agents back. Although Dave believes the payroll will be around the same as it was last year. Obviously, there'll probably be a small bump based on whatever the tax numbers look like, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be willing to break the bank, even though this is a year before the financial structure of the game is going to change with what is almost certainly going to be a lockout at the end of the season. It sounds like the payroll will be about what it was last year, which is still, a lot of money, but you can't just go do whatever they won't just go do whatever they want this offseason and sign Alonso and sign Kyle Tucker and sign this guy and sign that guy. That's probably not happening unless you don't re-sign Kyle Schwarber. Rob Thompson did note that the lineup is lefty heavy. He said, our lineup is pretty deep, but we're awfully left-handed. I can say that. Where does that come from? Meaning, what other help can they get right-handed? I don't know. Is it out there? I don't know either. There's not a great right-handed hitting outfielder unless you swing and trade, unless you trade for Joe Adele. Do we believe in that long-term? Maybe. I don't know. That's kind of, man, that's a risk. That's a roll of the dice, maybe you do something like that. Liz, I want to throw this one your way. What about all the praise Dave Dombrowski threw Otto Kemp's way in this news conference? He's talking about, he's rattling off the young players they have: Justin Crawford, Andrew Painter, Aiden Miller, Otto Kemp. What? Otto Kemp? I mean, I guess had a fine year, did some good things, but he went on and on about Otto Kemp, called him a tough player. He actually broke his kneecap in a game against the Marlins, fouled a ball off his knee back, and I think it was in like July, and played through it during the course of the season. So Dave Dombrowski was marveling at that, and he said, I think Otto Kemp has a chance to be an everyday player. Those were from Dave Dombrowski. So my question to you, Liz, is, does he really believe,
got an expression on his face?
does he believe Otto Kemp can be like an everyday player, like playing every day? Or is he kind of saying this as like laying the groundwork to like trade Alec Bohm this offseason, have Otto Kemp play third until Aiden Miller is ready?
That certainly could happen. That could be true. But I don't know. Did you consider that Otto Kemp could be Dave Dombrowski's long-lost son? With the way he was talking about him, like he was really laying it on. I mean, but I will say it seems like kind of a deep cut for them to be laying groundwork for like this trade that they kind of they might do. Like if you're laying groundwork for a trade, it should be for someone big, not necessarily, like for this Alec Bohm deal that we were envisioning.
They want to trade Alec Bohm, though. They want to trade Alec Bohm. Come on, we know that, right?
I don't know why. I don't know why. He's a good player.
Is
Am I
he?
missing something?
Well, I mean, again, if
What was that,
you
John?
look at this lineup the way it's constructed, and okay, they win 96 games, and they keep going to the playoffs, and Alec Bohm has been the third baseman through all those seasons and everything, and you're like, yeah, I mean, Liz is right. Alec Bohm is routinely, among the, if not the RBI leader on the Phillies. Like, he's had a job the past few years, and he's done it adequately, if not well at times. He's also, had plenty of rough stretches. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, if you want to be content with Alec Bohm, you can do that, and there will be evidence to support your claim. However, if you're looking for areas to change and improve, you can do better than Alec Bohm. You can. So if that's a button they want to push, that's a road they can go down. It's going to take some effort, because if your question is, well, who do you replace him with? I don't have a list of names in front of me, but there are guys who hit better than Alec Bohm, and you can look for third baseman. Alex Bregman just opted out of his deal with the Red Sox. You're going to hear that name a lot over the offseason. Kevin Negandhi was already trumpeting that very move for the Phillies as soon as that news broke. So, you can improve and you can change, and that is an area where you can do that. However, laying the groundwork for Otto Kemp to be the guy that could also be a job that I'm not advocating for this.
It seems like it's too much.
It seems, for Otto Kemp, who I have been touting all season long as a valuable player for the Phillies, not because of him leading the team in a bunch of offensive categories, though he did hit the second most hard hit balls according to Fangraph in the second half under Kyle Schwarber. He also struck out the most as far as K percentage goes. So, how many guys like that do you want starting for your team? Because it feels like that's kind of a common personality.
What a whole fleet.
But regardless, Otto Kemp is, in my mind, when I'm touting him all season, the kind of player that, we need a guy because of injuries. We got to look in the utility closet for a player who can come up and help us. Oh, look, down in the minors, we have this guy, Otto Kemp. He, really raised some eyebrows by going nuts in the Arizona Fall League not too long ago. What an interesting guy. Let's bring him up. And he comes up, hits 220 most of the time, if that. Makes some pretty good stops, hits some pretty clutch, surprising hits, plays some decent defense on occasion. But for the most part, is just that guy. I get having an attachment to him and saying oh, I want to make sure this guy gets his credit, because he may not be the best player on the team or even the top 10 best player on the team, but for the role he had, he excelled. Cool. But then to be laying the groundwork for him to inherit the starting third base job just seems like a giant leap, when other people are saying, I'd like Alex Bregman to have that job, who is a totally different player on the other end of the spectrum. So, I don't know. That's strange to me.
But see, here's the thing. Because there's lots of different pieces in place here. So this involves Trey Turner. Trey Turner plays shortstop. Aiden Miller is a shortstop who can play shortstop at the big league level. One would think at some point Trey Turner will move off of shortstop, and that will be Aiden Miller's job. So the thinking then there is, well, Trey Turner's playing shortstop next year, but if you want to get Aiden Miller to the majors, it's going to have to be at third base. Unless you teach him corner outfield, which between now and then, I don't know, might not be enough time for that. So you could have Aiden Miller at third base, and the only way to make that happen is if you move Alec Bohm out. And you need somebody to bridge the gap there. Now, it could be Edmundo Sosa, but you like Sosa to be able to move around from to second and short and all that. You have Otto Kemp. So I think that's part of it. I don't think in his heart Dave Dombrowski believes Otto Kemp.
I know he doesn't. Because he can't.
Right.
He's got two eyes and a brain.
Right. And I think with Alec Bohm, he does enough good things that he has trade value. But let me I got to just read these numbers. Wins above replacement in 2021, negative 1.2. In 2022, 0.9. In 2023, 0.5. Last year it was 3. He was worth 3 wins above replacement. This year, 1.3. He had an OPS plus of 101 in 2022, 107 in 23, 114 last year, and 102. He was 2% above league average in terms of offense. He's also not a good defender at third base. and he has absolutely zero athleticism on the base paths. So when I hear the Phillies writers talking about he's a really good player, show me how. Show me
1/3 of a baseball player, really.
he hits 280. That's Alec Bohm. That's what Alec Bohm does. He had like 17 doubles this year. Okay, he wasn't. I don't care if Alec Bohm doesn't hit home runs as long as he's hitting doubles. He wasn't even doing that this year. So no, I'm sorry. I don't think Alec Bohm is a very good player. I think he's an average player, and I think that's a spot that you absolutely should look to move on from. And if it's Alex Bregman this offseason, you sign him to play third base, and you just have Aiden Miller kind of cooling his heels in AAA all season until Trey Turner's ready to move to center field or wherever it is he's going to move. Okay, I guess that's what you do, but I would absolutely look to move on to an upgrade from Alec Bohm. And it sounded to me, maybe I want to read into what Dave Dombrowski was saying there, but that sounds to me like they're at least keeping that option open.
So in that scenario, when they move Trey Turner to center field, they've essentially shifted gears on improving the outfield because the infield is where you're focusing on. Okay.
Well, which is why
just for clarity's sake.
Which is why I don't think Alex Bregman is coming to Philadelphia this offseason.
Yeah.
I don't think that they want to sign a star third baseman.
They want to lock a guy up who is already in his 30s to like what he wants to be a longer term deal. Like how many of those do you want? That's kind of where I'm landing on that. You were almost kind of talking me into that there until I realized you had to put Trey Turner somewhere in center field. 30, what he's going to be like 32-year-old first time Major League Baseball center fielder Trey Turner.
It's going to depend.
The history of hamstring issues.
If they come up with a number of kind of long-term solutions in the outfield, then you probably don't put Trey Turner out there. But my guess is at least one of the guys you bring in is probably on a 1-year deal, right?
So, and this is what we do at this point when the idea is change and no one has a super specific idea of how. You technically you could move Bohm and you could move Stott and just move Turner over to second, have Miller at short, and then bring Bregman in to play third. I mean,
do that too.
You can do that.
You can move the whole daycare in one trade, guys. The whole daycare goes in one deal.
Justin solved it.
You're welcome, Phillies. You owe me for more than this, too.
I've been waiting on my front lawn for my payment.
Right. All right. The last thing that I saw, I just wanted to mention, I don't know if there's anything to talk about really, but did you see Dave Dombrowski throw some shade at Matt Strahm? Matt Strahm, during the course of the, right after the Orion Kerkering play, after the game, seemed to say like, well, I take responsibility for it too, because I didn't see to it that we did, any PFP, some pitcher fielding practice, it's indicating that like they didn't do a whole lot of pitcher fielding practice. They didn't do it leading up to the playoffs. They didn't do it in the regular season. And he was kind of saying like, oh, we should have done this more. Dave Dombrowski was asked about that in the news conference and just essentially said, when he said, does he mean in the postseason or the regular season? Because we definitely did it in the regular season. He's like, no, he was talking about regular season and postseason. So Dombrowski comes back with, oh, no, we did PFP. He didn't do it, but we did do PFP. So basically saying like, no, Strahm didn't take part in any pitcher's fielding practice, but as a team, as a club, we did do it. He was angry. He was he knew what the comments were about, and he was not happy with Matt Strahm, who by passing a physical and reaching a certain innings limit for 20.
I was going to say he will be back on the team. So
yes, he will be.
Kind of curious. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wonder what bugged him so much about that. I mean, you could say like, okay, I guess he doesn't want a player saying like we didn't practice when we should have, I guess, but
makes the manager look bad.
I guess, but Strahm saying that felt more like he was just like, I don't know, looking for a way to take responsibility for a guy like making a mistake that's going to live in his head for the rest of his life. I read that as just him being like, just kind of trying to be a bro, like not even really. Yeah, he doesn't need to say that. He doesn't need to jump on that grenade, but he's just kind of like, yeah, I should have done that. I didn't even realize Strahm had that kind of pull as like the bullpen captain or whatever. Like, I wouldn't have thought that was his responsibility, but then he framed it like I should have been on top of that. I should have had these guys running those drills. And I was like, I guess that's his job. Well, and I guess he's willing to take advantage or take responsibility for that. So for Dombrowski to come out and like really jump on that as like some sort of insult was like, oh, I wonder what's going on there, because that I didn't read that as particular indictment of the Phillies when he said that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't either. But I guess it does make sense. Like if you think about who's been there the longest, I mean, Alvarado's been there the longest, but he wasn't there for half the season. Everybody else is kind of new. Like Matt Strom's been there since 23. It's like his third season. It's probably, he's probably the elder statesman of this Phillies bullpen, especially without Jose Alvarado there. But I agree with you. I didn't read anything into that other than just like, I'm trying to take some heat off of my guy. And Dombrowski.
Take Dave Dombrowski instead.
I mean, Dave Dombrowski is the most like measured baseball executive you're ever going to see. So that's why I brought it up, because I did not expect to hear that. It definitely rankled him.
Just another question. If Strom knows he's the only one who didn't participate in PFP drills, why would he even bring them up? Why would he be the one to say, like, oh, yeah, we all should have been doing that, when he knows the truth is that only he wasn't doing them? Like, did he not think there would be pushback after that?
That's a fair question.
The whole thing is strange.
Yeah, very, very strange. All right, I don't have anything else on this news conference. Was there anything else that you guys picked up?
What was the comment? Not to dwell on Castellanos, but Dombrowski, did he say he had to get involved at one point?
Yeah, something like that. I don't have the exact quote, but I mean, I was just reading some reporters, and I didn't remember him saying this during the news conference, but I think that he said something along the lines of like, not that he necessarily had to get involved to like mediate the situation between the two of them, but yeah,
just grabbing the back of his shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of just be like, hey, fellas, let's straighten this out, iron this out.
Man,
that was my impression of it.
This might have been a more lively Clubhouse than we were led to believe for such a business-like team taking such a business-like approach.
It has a real Carlos Santana vibe to it. Like we're gonna find out at some point whatever was happening in the the equivalent of the TV being smashed with a baseball bat.
And I'll say this, there's a lot of Phillies podcasts that we compete with, and I think we all agree Matt Gelb covers this team as well as anybody in the city. And so I'd listen to the Phillies Therapy podcast every once in a while because I want to hear if he's got any insights on what's happening inside the locker room. And he was talking about, let's go back to Bryce Harper. It sounds as though, based on what he was saying, like that there's something was going on. Like something was just off this year. And everybody could see something was just off. Something wasn't right. And that's kind of where, and then you hear Dave Dombrowski say these things in the news conference today. I think these things are related. I think there was something going on in the clubhouse this year. And I don't know what it was, but it wasn't the same. They won 96 games. And honestly, as you watch the Dodgers blitz through the Brewers, they played the Dodgers pretty well. I mean, it was pretty nip and tuck. This was not a redux of the Mets series. This was a different effort they put out in this series. They very easily could have won that series in 4 games, and they could have swept the series, frankly, very easily if some things had gone a little bit differently.
They played their best baseball at the end of the season, at the end of the regular season.
They were in exactly the spot where they wanted to be, where we wanted them to be, playing the way they wanted to play, entering the playoffs. So if there were things going on in the clubhouse, it didn't affect their play on the field. It doesn't seem to me. But that was I heard that, and that's why that has kind of stuck with me, and that really hit me today when Dave Dombrowski said the things he said about Bryce. So, and it wasn't even negative. Like he was just like, yeah, he wasn't as good as he normally is, and we need him to be great, and he wasn't great.
I'll throw out there also that Max Kepler saying he wants to come back is nice. He's not coming back. Come on, man. We're not.
He's going to go play in South Korea next year.
Cool. All right.
That's not happening. I think Bader's going to be a really interesting decision too. But
yeah,
we can discuss. We got a long off season. Where we can kind of break down more specific players. But so as we wrap up here, I'll give you guys a chance for some final thoughts before I do the official ending here. I know we've been going on for a little while, but Liz, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I don't have anything right now.
Justin?
I'll say that the Hittin Season Patreon will be alive and functioning all throughout the offseason as well, with Absolutely Hammered, The Dirty Inning. Trying to make that an active place for you to come if and when you return to wanting to hear about the Philadelphia Phillies. And yeah, just to close the loop on what is now chapter 1 of a very curious situation to me, we got Castellanos and his kind of like shenanigans and outbursts throughout the season that occurred second half a couple of times. You got this Matt Strom thing that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. You got Harper never really getting his head right. Suddenly, there just seems to be this pile of evidence that, there is indeed something here. And now I'm very curious to find out what it is, because if it has anything to do with Harper, looking like how he looked, then that's something that impacted the season. So time will only tell, but I'm very curious now.
I'm very curious as well. We'll see what shakes out. So the way things are going to work here this offseason, now that we've officially entered the offseason, we will be doing one roundtable podcast per week. It'll most likely be on Sunday or Monday nights like we normally do it. And then we'll pop on again as news warrants, but the three episodes a week, that'll be back once we hit spring training next year. But for the off season, on weeks when there's not a lot going on, we'll give you a roundtable. And like Justin said, there's also going to be a lot of good content over at the Hittin Season Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/hittinseason. So we will be back for a roundtable episode just to kind of if there's any little nuggets or loose ends or pieces of news that come down, and we'll talk a little World Series too, because by that time we will know who the World Series participants are. So we'll get you ready for the Fall Classic as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin Season.